Today's guest, Christine Wacta, is someone that I highly respect, not only because she's a PhD, globally recognized design professor and design entrepreneur, spending time at companies like the Geospatial Tech firm Esri, but Christine and I are very aligned on the idea that we need to bring more humanity into data, into technology, and really take a top-down approach to both education and entrepreneurial ecosystem development, where we're teaching people how to solve problems in their lived experience, in their natural environment, and create technology and design things that uplift humanity, not design technology that just sucks from us and takes from humanity and treats us like economic units. And so today we really talked about how Christine takes this approach in her university courses and the education curriculum that she's developed through Geoedu Gaming. And I really think anyone who's interested in technology, futurism, AI, or just learning more about what even is design or geospatial design is really going to benefit from this conversation. So with that, I will let Christine take it away.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Ascendance, a podcast about how brands and leaders are unlocking human potential. Today we have Christine Wacta, who is a PhD expert in design education, and so many other things. I don't even want to try to take the responsibility of getting into all your credentials. So maybe I'll let you give us a brief intro. Here's Christine, if you wouldn't mind telling us, a little bit about who you are and why you're so passionate about design and education.
Thank you, Will, and thank you so much for this great opportunity. It is really a great pleasure to meet you again here on the podcast, knowing that we have collaborated a little bit. Yes, my name is Christine Wacta, and I am from African descent, born in Africa. I have traveled the world and studied in many places. My background is in architecture, and the last 7 years I have been doing geospatial and had a PhD in geospatial. And the way my PhD worked, it was really engineered to bring data and science into education and into design education. I have actually since developed and collaborate with many and created some geospatial company that actually boost or bring, how do you say, a manageable way of inserting geoscience into education and life. So one of it is Geoedu Gaming, my company that I created a couple of years ago that actually brings, geospatial and science intelligence into education in a way that is fun, in a way that meets the generation, in a way that really actually looks at design and education in a way that is, augmenting human experience, unlocking the potential of the kid or the new generation to actually do better than we have ever been able to.
So that's a really intriguing place to start. Tell me a little bit more about what is Geoedu Gaming and how are you using, you mentioned using data to create better education curriculum and such. Tell me a little bit more about that. How does Geoedu Gaming work?
So I need to tell you how Geoedu Gaming actually originated. It's not something that I invented. As an educator, I had taught architecture at university for over 14 years, and really got to a point where I had this big rock and realizing that what we were teaching the student was not actually accurate. So we were telling stories that were lies. And then we end up having a design that has nothing to do with what we're teaching, with the theory. So I stumbled on GIS referred by a friend of mine. And when I started looking into a geospatial, I remember very clearly it was a city engine tutorial. And as I started going through it, I realized that this whole set of platform GIS that was nothing into the design or that we knew about was actually doing or showing what we were teaching theoretically that we couldn't actually apply. So it's really, in my head, it was just an easy connection bringing that tool into education was really what we needed to do, because I saw in that, GIS as almost an X-ray, something that actually allows us to predict, to understand before we actually make decision. So bringing it into architecture education, where we make decision and we judge before understanding why things are happening, really was actually the best place to do that. And as soon as I did that, I create an assignment where students were actually empowered and given the opportunity to go out and test things. And through that assignment, looking at how students went on and really took ownership of that application and start pushing the boundaries. So the way they were doing that assignment actually resembled the game. They were actually like in a game and didn't know they were playing it. So that's how Geo Edu Gaming came about, because watching those kids kind of push the boundary and act like, a game designer into a design where they were actually looking at data, bringing it in and creating, stories that were actually developing based on existing, and that were actually able to tackle the issue that were at hand. So Geo Gaming actually initiated then to bring science and education with the fun that I saw into my classroom, and that's really what Geo Gaming does. So now I'm developing curriculum for university, and I have actually recently started in interior design, human ecology,
Mm.
where I'm able to actually connect the urban ecology with the human ecology. Because I think that unfortunately, and we could talk about, innovation, AI, all of what we're talking about, but we have actually missed the opportunity to connect the human ecology with urban ecology. The problem that we have is that we have tools that focus so much on the urban. We have tools that could scan, that could actually collect all of the, all of the anything that happened, all of the events that are happening, but we have missed the ability to focus on that humanity, and the potential that human have to actually push that boundary further, the potential that human have to bring the differences. What I think data does, or science does, science allow us to actually focus in area based on what that area is and what it means to itself rather than to the world, while the general education has actually created a path that we follow that is based on, grading criteria. We have everybody meet a certain limit, and that is killing the innovative and the power of individuality, and and like the innate power and innovative capability that we are all born with. So I think that bringing data is really breaking and shifting, and I would say disrupting this status quo, breaking from we have to fit in this category of following one path to our differences are what we need to focus on, so that together we could actually learn and build bigger. And that's really where I am.
So there's a ton in there to unpack, and I love your perspective because I mean I talk to educators, I talk to technologists, but the way that you're approaching youth and teaching them how to be, you said you're kind of taking a game design approach to education. I think that's beautiful. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. So how does that work? Whether it's geo fashion or a specific application you mentioned, kind of building narratives around, is it around like their local communities? How does that practically work, like when you're working with kids? And talk a little bit more about that game design approach.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, and I don't think that this is not a real new concept, even though its application is totally new. We've heard about this society that is talking about bottom up, and where people are actually developing things. But I think that those are really superficial in what we're talking about bottom up. I have realized that, and being an educator for so long, it really hit me one day that after teaching for, let's say, 5 or 7 years, I realized that not my best student were the one making it out there. It was the worst student who sometimes made it and were actually leading the world. And at that point, I had this question. I asked myself, how have I missed this opportunity? So I'm thinking that, maybe when that student was in my class, it could have been that I was not able to catch that that star in them, right? Or it might be that he was going through something totally different. At that point, I realized that we cannot judge if we haven't given opportunity, that we cannot just con people out, and that everybody's star might not shine the day you see them, but it might be shining everywhere else. So that's when I realized that really it's not really about seeing who is doing well. It's about understanding how people are doing. Because if we don't meet them where they are the best, we will lose them. And I realized
Mm.
that in my class, I didn't meet that light for that student. So changing my whole way of teaching, where I didn't come there as giving you the information, I came and said, this is the information. You tell me how we do it. What are the problems? And those students start finding out things that I didn't know. And this comes from where they come from, what they have been exposed to, what they have seen that I have never seen. And what they did, in fact, is they brought all of that knowledge into the classroom. And we now had this collective intelligence that I could never have brought together, that I could never have made. And that collective intelligence was really something that everybody actually grab on and augmented and share back. So really, the classroom has become at that point for me this type of knowledge good. I don't know if so because the good is something that we actually need, but it's a good that the more we use, the more value it takes. So it's really goes to the opposite of what we know about life, right? So what is that type of good that you use and it keep building up? It's because we have come to this area of shareable content where everybody is able to actually, embrace who they are, different from you and I, and bring it out so that you could augment yourself based on that knowledge. And that's really how my class, like geo fashion, and now I'm developing a geo information lab in the urban design over there, where I'm having every student basically set their own rule. And of course, it's not easy because I think that we have a generation of students who are so smart but who have been spoon fed so long that they ask you for a list. What do you need? Like yesterday, I had this conversation with a student where you say, what is the list? I said, there's no list. You make the list. But what do I say? I don't know. I'm not expecting anything. You show me what you can do. I want to push you where you can be. I don't want you to do what I can do because I only know this much. So when you actually allow those kids to, when you give them the tool and say you are in charge, they blow your mind away. And that's really what we need to do. It is not a curriculum that says from A to Z and you have to do this with grading criteria. I think that grading criteria is really, I'm totally against grading criteria. I don't do those because I think that it's another way of punishment. How could you grade, if you don't actually have anything that is black or white? You saying,
Right.
well, I understand what you need, it has to be 1 2 3, and it could not be four. What is between 1 to 3? There's three and a half. I mean, you are actually shutting down a lot of opportunity for that child to evolve, and maybe that's where they find themselves. So to me, I have stopped calling myself a professor. I'm a facilitator. So I facilitate this knowledge, this shareable knowledge. I guide them, I allow them. I use my knowledge to actually push those skills out and allow them to be whoever they want to be, who they could be. And I think that that's the difference between, education as I knew it and education as I'm bringing it. And actually,
Mm.
the thing that I do in my geo fashion and geo design, I say bring anything that you need, any tool that you know that has nothing to do with what you're doing. And what emerged from that is just fantastic. It's phenomenal because what you're doing, you're actually empowering the child. You're telling them they matter. You're telling them whatever come out of them, it's possibly an idea that could actually grow into innovation, and they take it on and they push it. You have to actually hold them because they get so excited. And I have find that so satisfying for me, and has made me step down from this professorship that made me want to give answer to everything to saying, I don't know, find out and let's figure it out. So it's really actually has allowed me to become human and
Mm.
understand that we all are people that evolve from each other experience, and that this whole world is really a big puzzle, and we cannot focus on the larger puzzle when we forget the tiniest one, because if that tiniest one fell, that big one will be ill and will not function right. So
So there's so many thoughts that are sparking from that. I first off, I think it's important maybe to explain the concept of top down versus bottom up learning, which I think you mentioned. And for me, just to kind of map this back to some of my story and why I even started this podcast. When I was in school, I was not. I'm an entrepreneur now. I've been an entrepreneur for 3.5 years. I've built 5+ brands. I have a nonprofit that's partnered with the University of Minnesota, a media company that's worked with Live Nation. I've been able to do all that in 3 years. When I was in school, um, I was depressed. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't a comp. I mean, I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't solving problems, and it wasn't until I really broke out of that box, to your point of like, here's the list of requirements. We want you to build this or do this or fulfill this assignment. And just started looking around in the world around me and saying, how do I solve a problem? How do I create something new? And figure out what that means. Because we don't even, there's no requirements. There's no parameters for, like, when you're an entrepreneur, you're going to see something that no one else has seen before and then create your own parameters around what the problem is and how to solve it, right? And so if you're only thinking in boxes, you're only thinking about, here's the problem, here's the answer, and the professor or someone has the answer, right? Sometimes the questions are far more important than the answers.
yes.
And so you talked about a little bit about kind of that collective consciousness of how human understanding and information ecology is developing. I think I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you're seeing that, because I've heard this concept called decentralized collective intelligence, just
Mhm.
like the way that, because you mentioned content and how we're all producing content, we're all kind of self-actualizing on the internet, or not, or
Mhm.
retreating farther into our bubbles.
Mhm.
But the way that we even solve problems and pick up information is different now, right? Because like we don't, it's not like we have to have all these keepers of the information to go to the libraries and the textbooks to tell us what to look at. I mean, everything's out there, right? So we should bring it all together and see what comes out of it.
Yes, yes. And I think that, that also has, that has actually opened a whole new realm, and open it for everybody, because I think that we have a generation today that is so afraid to fail, you know. And the
Mm,
very first question that I do when I get into my class, I tell them, I want you to fail. And I give them a quiz where they all fail because they're so frightened that they wouldn't try. And I think that this letting you in the wild of yourself allow you to actually mess up so bad you cannot mess up. I think that, if we all kind of exercise this failure where we fail so much that the failure become like that solid foundation, we are fearless. We are up there to win, and we will win big, And I think that being able to try to realize that, and it's really bring us down to being human, accepting that we cannot do it right the first time. We might not do it right the second or the 10th time, but the day we do it right, it will be the right, it will be one right, and that right will basically kind of outweigh all of the wrong that that we've done. But then we become stronger because we have learned so much, And I think that that's the resilience of humanity, And when we break that resilience in the classroom, where we actually set those grades, where a student asks you, "Oh, if I'm late, how many points are you gonna remove?" Those are questions that basically break my heart, because I'm like, we have actually allocate people to this system of gratification, that they need that gratification. They need to know how much they're gonna miss of this candy if they do this. I said, be yourself. Does it matter? So if we actually start removing that system and allowing people to actually embrace their failure, we'll have stronger humanity. We have a humanity that is actually more compassionate, because if we understand that we fail, then we're going to be more compassionate about the failure of other, and we're going to be more understanding about that. So I think that that's really where that collective intelligence comes from, because it's come from an ability to actually assume yourself as no god, and realize that alone, all you know is what you know, and that when you share it out there, somebody else will add something to it and pick something else that will make them better, and whatever they give you will make you even better. That really actually really makes it so easy and make the relation so easy, because then in that collectiveness, and I have seen that in my classroom, we now have people who are freely speaking, who are actually just saying how it is and how they think about it, and realizing that whatever they say could be picked up and actually cleaned up or augmented for something else, and
Hmm.
they could actually gain from that as well. So that allowed me to realize that whatever I'm getting out come back to me with interest. Why wouldn't I go and take it out? So it's really this environment where I know that I'm going in it, because things that I have in my head that I cannot yet formalize could be actually formalized by somebody else and get me an opportunity to shine with my idea. And there's no, we actually moving away from this, oh, that's my idea, iconic idea. No, it's just that I'm part of this bigger picture, and my idea generated something. And we basically allowing people to actually love each other and love them for what they have that we don't have, because what they have that we don't have will be maybe something that will unlock us to become who we always were supposed to become. I think that that's really just summarize it all.
And I think that perspective is it's very spiritual, and it's like none of those ideas are new, but again, like the way you're applying them are new. But the sense of there's a saying, people don't have ideas have people. Right. Right. I think we get so caught up in like this scarcity mentality of like, I gotta own my ideas, I gotta own my IP, I gotta own my stuff, and then I gotta get the results I want in the game, the system that I'm playing, and the educational system or the
Mhm,
business system.
mhm.
And it's very egocentric, and it limits a lot of human potential, because like to your point, you can't build off of each other's ideas and build an ecosystem where I might understand a mathematical concept and you might understand like fashion and design and have a very different brain.
Oh yeah.
But if we're not able to collaborate, there's no system that in the boxes of the math class and the art class, there's not an opportunity for collaboration there. But in an ecology, in an ecosystem where you're just trying to solve problems,
Mhm.
and it's top down, it doesn't matter how you get to the solutions, and there actually is no parameters for the solutions, you're just creating.
Exactly.
Then you can kind of let whatever it is that is authentic to you flow through you and contribute to the greater
Mhm.
ecology, the greater ecosystem, whether that's improving your city, whether that's uplifting your community, whether that's social reform, instead of just trying to tweak the levers of an old system. You just fundamentally reimagine it together, and I think that's beautiful. And I also think what you're doing is really important, because that has to be done in community. It can't be done
Oh
alone.
yeah.
It can't be.
Oh yeah.
And I think people intuitively, they want to behave with an abundance mindset. They want to support each other. We want to have compassion. We want to lift each other up. That's in all of us. But the problem with education, in my experience, and I'd love to hear your perspective, the problem with education and the business world to some extent is that it's very isolating. It wants to put us in individual boxes,
Mhm.
define our worth as an economic unit, and so that I think that limited my potential for sure until I'm still kind of breaking out of that. It's taken years. What do you think about that? Just that sense of isolation.
And I think that that's I think that's the hijacking society that I call, it's what I call the society has hijacked us, because in fact, if you think about that idea, and this idea that people are going to steal your idea that sits in you and never grow, while if you put that idea out, it could be like a tree. The tree might be in your yard, but it doesn't belong to you, and see it grow. So at least you are part of that tree. It doesn't like this sense of belonging where we want to have everything and just take it to ourselves. At the end of the day, we're going to die and leave it right there, so, and I think that we have basically waste so much time and so much ingenuity, and dying with those. Think about all of those people who had the greatest idea who died and never got it out, so
Hmm.
that's really a loss for a society that could have actually benefit from it, I have to remind myself of this sentence that my great friend that Colton Zakaria told me when I came up with this great idea of geo-edge gaming, and the idea was just popping, and I was just having all of those moment. And when I talked to him, he said, I say, oh, maybe we need a patent. He said, Christine, you are the patent. It's in your mind. Nobody can do it better than you. And that's what it is, what you're saying, that, our idea, if somebody takes it, they're going to do it differently. So they're going to actually evolve it in a way that could actually inform us our own idea so that they could be even better, because we are the patent of our own idea, because only us can do it the way we see it. If our idea is able to actually be replicated exactly the same way as we did it, it's meant that our DNA has been transferred, It's really, how do you see those things? And I think that, just like you, education and even the world, the way we live, has to actually break from this polarizing one person who actually control everybody else. So in the work environment, if our work environment allowed us to actually be able to be recognized and to get, how do you say, to get like, award or to be rewarded for what we bring in, people will do a lot more because they're going to be part of it. Guess what?
Hmm.
To work, they leave work, they don't want to talk about work. So they basically slaving out for the money, and they get that money and they don't want to do anything. And they will do the bare minimum, to do it. And that's really what I'm thinking. When my student asks me how many drawings, it's just like I'm asking for the bare minimum so that I could give you what you want to pass this loop, And how do you enjoy your life if you're not enjoying what you're doing? It's about the enjoyment. It could take one, it could take 15, it doesn't matter. It's how much have you been involved in it, and how much do you think you are part of it. But I think that, doing what you did, like breaking out of that system, it's something that takes a lot of courage, right? Because a lot of people, because you have a society that look at you for, where are you going to school, what are you doing, and if you're on your own, it's just like, so what are you, so where did, so it's really this reshifting the way in which we think, and basically breaking those barriers and recognizing people in their location, in their ability, and in their passion, and what they know how to do, and one of the things that could actually allow us to do it, will allow us to actually be in contact with our own inner self, because I have to tell you that a lot of us wake up and do the job, and they are so outside of themselves that they haven't checked who they are inside. Because
Especially with technology, with so much technology in our lives.
yes. If you check in and ask, what am I really well here, or am I here because I have to be? The because I have to be will take over. Am I happy? We live a life of unhappiness. We are going into work and stressing out and making our body, kill us. And then we paying for a house, and by the time we're done paying for it, we die because we've put so much stress on our body and we haven't enjoyed the time. How many times have I seen my colleague work so hard for so many years, and when they retire, boom, they die, and they had no life. So we need to take ownership of what we do. We need to actually be in touch, but we need a society that should actually shift and change. And I'm hoping that in bringing it into this education system where it's become a healer, we need to heal our system. We need to heal ourselves. We need to actually use education as a therapeutic, approach to actually understanding us to actually excel and have fun and be able to participate next. And I think that is that healing, that care of self that will actually allow us to bring out the best of ourselves. Because if we have a sick society, we will be producing sick result.
100%. Yeah, 100% agree. And that's, I mean, for me, yoga and meditation have been my path to kind of get out of, I have a data analytics degree and a tech background and spend so much time on technology. I realized, like, until I started meditating and really practicing yoga on a consistent basis, I didn't realize how lost in that image of myself that I was, and it just keeps getting reinforced by social media and all of the digital worlds that we're interacting with. And so, yeah, that if we can't heal, those patterns or those traumas that we're just continuing to
Mhm.
act on, then yeah, we can't really break out of that system.
Exactly. And I think that healing, the healing solution to me is that geospatial platform, at least in the design or in the area that I am in, because of the intelligence, because of the fact that we have all of those data sitting around. We collect data today more than we know what to do with. And yet we have those system of education. I'm talking in architecture, urban design, where we're not even using it, where we're not touching it. I have find that when you use data, you could actually do an hour work and it's going to actually produce 10 hour for somebody who is not using it. So, and I think that the same happened with the company. If company want, and I think if company want, I think this is really kind of, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I think that this is actually, engineer, slavery, where we stretch the time where people stay at work so long that when they get home, they're so tired, they don't have time to think of themselves. And what you do, all you do is go and work. We have efficient way with technology where we could shorten that period so that people could take more time with nature and reconnect with nature. I cannot have work in offices where half of the day we do nothing but sit around. Why do we
Mhm.
have to be inside of the building and basically be stressed out and talk about things that make no sense instead of making the right decision? Well, it's because, in fact, if people start thinking and get out in nature, they must start being actually um, able to think on their own and develop other things and maybe shift away. It is possible. Are we going to do it? I think that the choice is ours. It's ours to actually either push those things in so that we could actually be more efficient in doing what we do and get back to nature. Because I really think that technology, and this is one thing that we people misunderstand, the misconception of technology is that technology is so out there that you are not in touch with nature. That is totally wrong. Technology is there to augment human ability to connect with nature. It's not
Mm.
there to separate us. But if we're using it wrong, like we've been using, we are basically running away and now trying to pick up some other, adds up to connect back to nature. We are nature. We were it. And we need to just make sure that technology is geared toward doing what we need to do. And in the work environment, it will be how do we use technology to lessen the stress, to make sure that people are in a better environment, to make sure that we understand how they feel so that we could reshuffle things and they could spend more time here and less time here and more time in nature and with their family. And that is all possible. Why have we not done that? Well, because it's serving some purpose and nobody's realizing. So I think we're running ourselves very thin.
I agree, and I think, and that's one of the reasons why Web3 is really exciting to me, because to your point, when you have a system that it only understands people as human capital, right? Economic units. where that definition basically means that we have to put them in a box for 8 hours so we can pay them something for an output, instead of, like you were saying, why don't we have all this technology, why are we working more, why are we more stressed, right? We have more production capacity, more wealth in the world than ever before, and we're working more and we're stressed more and we're less creative. That doesn't really add up. But we still are in this old paradigm of like factories
Yes.
and this old industrial paradigm. And I think we can't apply that old industrial paradigm of I go to the factory for 8 hours and produce, shirts and clothing or cars or whatever it is. Like, humans aren't doing that anymore. I mean, they are in some countries, but in the developed world, and hopefully, very soon, no one will have to do that. So we can't apply that old industrial paradigm to knowledge work and to creative work, which is what all, tech companies and all the, most of the most valuable companies in the world are producing. They're producing knowledge, they're producing digital IP, they're producing software and creative solutions, and then you're treating your employees like old
Yes.
industry factory workers.
Yes. Yes. And I think, we have seen a lot of example, and I'm hoping that, what we have actually witnessed in the last 2 years with the COVID-19. I mean, how could a society that is so highly technologically powerful be shut down when we have the tool to actually be able to understand? This is a wave that, I mean, this has blown my mind away, because if we have the, it's not that we didn't have the tool, it's not that we didn't understand how we could do that, is that we have misused technology, is that we have used technology and as an add-on, not as part of what it should be doing, is that we have actually had our focus in the wrong place. We had tool to actually be able to lessen everything, but we didn't have them in the right place, and we still today not even there, because we're still shuffling, wondering how do we actually do that, because we're so stuck in this idea that we were actually normal. What was normal? We were actually off normal. That's what happened with COVID. And still today, we haven't even aligned the things the way they should be aligned. Is the misuse of technology. I think that there are two issues. It's either we have we have actually boosted technology to a level that is actually above our head and we cannot control it, or we are basically just, like, following technology because we think technology will do everything. So we try to replace technology with, with human, and we can never do that. So we need to figure out and realize that if human create technology, they should make it so that technology serve humanity, not the opposite. Right now, technology has us on a leash, and we've been pulled by technology. And I think that it should flip. It should be flipped over.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And where I see potentially some case for optimism in the Web3 space is that at least, it's not perfect, but at least in some of the communities that are developing, like they're starting to get away from some of those old games, right?
Mhm.
It's not that humans aren't resilient. It's not that nature, you bring up nature and bringing us back to nature and learning from and designing with nature. Your former colleague Tom Fisher, I interviewed him on the podcast a couple months ago, and he was talking about how we need to design in harmony with nature and not try to fight nature, because we're never. It's so prideful for humans to say, like, we're just going to control everything, we're going to control nature, instead of trying to learn from it and learn how to live in harmony with it. And I think that's why, we're seeing all these autoimmune diseases, we're seeing all these stress induced chronic conditions and these health outcomes that are I think in a lot of ways a product of our fight against
Oh,
fight
yeah.
against nature, fight to control everything.
And I think that's, you are absolutely right. And I can never, finish any talk without reminding, people of my grandmother, in Africa, whom I live with. So when I discovered this GIS technology, the first thing that came in mind, and it wasn't even that. It's just that I live a life in Africa that was a life of the farm, going to the farm, seeing people using the nature, loving the land, right? And they understood that land and they walk with the land, a place where you have 110-degree and water is always like fresh and very very cold, like it's coming out of the fridge, because they understood how to store the water so that you could always have a fresh water, because they work with that nature and they understood it very well. So when I start looking at GS and data, I look at some of the practice, the predictive analysis. Those are things that my grandmother did. We might not have called it geodesign, but it was called being part of nature and living with nature. Now we're calling it geodesign, we're calling it sustainability. Call it what you want. It was there at the beginning. So the only thing that my grandmother didn't have was this prediction in understanding how the soil is, so that she could plant 500 and get 2,000. In her own life she might have planted 1,000 and get 500 because she didn't understand the soil suitability. That's how technology should help human. It should help us understand what we cannot by ourselves understand, to be more productive, to do less work so that we could produce. But we were already part of nature, and that should stay, and technology should actually allow us to make sure that we maximize our gain and we limit our work. That's where we should, and we are that smart and we can do that. But if we start basically getting distracted by what technology shouldn't be doing, then we're going to really be, kind of killing nature. And nature doesn't play. We cannot beat nature. Nature will beat us right back. It's
Hmm.
a fight that we could even handle. It's something that we should actually be careful about, because if I build my house on a land that slide, guess what? It's gonna slide. Nature will come and say, "Well, you didn't listen to me," and that's what's happening. So I think that everything that we do, and that's what I say, when we start thinking about designing and controlling that nature, let's realize that nature cannot be controlled, because we could have anything, we could build everything that we want. At the end of the day, if we have a flood, it's gone, because we have not made sure that we understood how to do those things. Nature was there before us, and that is the idea that I don't understand. Many, many million years ago, there was nature, and then we got there and we want to control it. I mean, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely
Yeah,
no
and
sense.
and I think that, to our earlier point in our conversation, that kind of goes back to this just egocentric
Mhm.
view of the world that we've created and cultivated in our modern society. And you talked about how when COVID-19 hit, like our whole society was shut down, which is crazy for a society that's so, again, technologically powerful and capable. But I think it's part of it is the fragility is a reflection of the fragility of our ego and the games that we're playing, right? Because we're afraid to fail. We're taught in education, we have to fit in this box, fit in this system. When you're on your own, you got to be working for a company or doing something that proves that you're worth something, right? And so we're
Yes,
we're
yes.
so we're so focused on playing the game, we forget to be human.
Oh
and
yeah,
then and
yeah.
then it limits us from being able to, again, live and reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with nature,
Mhm.
and design and create from. If we design and create from that place where we're connected with ourselves, we're connected to nature,
Mhm.
we're thinking abundantly, we're becoming more anti-fragile, resilient, then the systems we develop in the world around us, the art, the business, and everything, the technology as well, is going to reflect that.
Oh yeah.
Instead of we take these fragile paradigms and we serve technology because we think we have to serve it,
Yes.
and then that becomes replicated everywhere in the world around us.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think that the more we wait, the time ran out long time ago. We
Hmm.
are trying to play. We should play catch up because the time has run out. One of the things that keep bugging me so much is we see the prediction of the population growth. Right, it's gonna happen. Right, and we are today talking about those, the people that have been forgotten, the discrimination, the division, the spatial divide, and all of this. Think about when that population double. What's going to happen? It's going to be double the time, those things. So we can be actually breaking even harsher, in those things if we haven't figured those out, because all of those differences, all of those spatial segregation will actually be even more, and they will bring some other one that we haven't even thought about. And where
Yep.
are we heading? We are heading to a big disaster. And that's scary, to me. That is totally scary because we are so focused on what we can do and what we see, but we're not seeing what we don't see that actually is underneath, that COVID has actually allowed us to actually see. But so far, I think that during COVID, there was a hope for me that, oh, things are going to change now that it has reveal some hidden, weaknesses. But it seems like we close that door and we just doing business as usual. And that's why company like you, that's why educator like me need to really push this idea, this disruptive idea into the system so that it could actually break that statu quo. I'm doing it at Georgia Southern, you're doing it with the university. I'm hoping that at some point we could actually grow more people like you and I to really kind of flip this over. It's just like really taking out a regime, just like taking it out because there's no other way to do it. We cannot fix it. We cannot make it work. It
Right.
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And I don't think I've told you this yet, but we with Smart North, with my nonprofit, we have a tech hub, we're calling it a future hub, 3 blocks outside of George Floyd Square here in
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis, in South Minneapolis, and one of the most under resourced neighborhoods there. And we're about to start doing AR, VR
Yeah,
design, programming, cybersecurity, robotics,
that's
fashion, music. So that's, I mean, and I know you're already doing, your programming, your work in
mhm.
universities and communities around the world. So I'm sure there's, and again, like I want all these connections to be actionable. And so I'd love to, after this podcast, let's reconnect and let's get your programs into our tech hub. And because I think the youth, focusing on the youth is
Yes.
probably the most effective way to create
Yes.
long-term change, because it's not, we can't, I don't think we can fight the old system. It's not about going to war with it's
Mhm.
just about creating something that is so much better that when a new generation of leaders rises up, the old system just looks and feels and becomes obsolete.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that you mentioned that because in my class today, I mean, I have a class that I'm teaching. It's called the Human Centered Design. I just won an award to actually develop that class into a hub. And what the student have to do, I think that we might need to connect for next semester. The student have to find 10 people and interview them and develop an application that they will use in their neighborhood to collect those feelings. And I think that that will be something that I would like to do with the youth in that neighborhood. And my student will have a specific group to talk to and develop those apps for them. And I think that could be great because I just came back from Italy where I was uh, heading one of the mini session in a urban design in one of the international urban design conference, and I have actually promised them to create a human ecology session for next year. So I think that I'm trying to develop those things, and I hope that I could have my student next semester develop this project with the smart node so that we could present it at the conference in Italy next year. Because I think that what this will do is really talking about human ecology into the urban ecology. And if we could tap into the smart node Minneapolis, we the student and I we travel to Italy and we tap into that and do another week, we could actually start looking at how people are living and mix and create something totally amazing. I'll be up for that.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Let's definitely set that up. I'd love to, would love to get some of the kids out to Italy too and
Yes.
present. I mean, that's, those connections I think what's really special and really kind of mind opening, especially for youth
Yes.
which are really the point of all this. So.
And that would be really amazing to actually get some of the youth to Italy, because at the conference, I have asked them and they have agreed to bring student and other and the younger generation. So if we could have like every year, I'm going there every year because I'm creating this session, and in fact I'm the one accepting the proposal. So I think that it would be good to set something where those youth could, at least one of them, go to Italy for 1 week and just experience and present their work at their level. I think that would be totally incredible.
Love it. So we're almost running up on time here, but I wanted to ask you one more question around geospatial and geo design. So just so people understand, what does geospatial mean? And I know it's mapping and looking at kind of our local environments and stuff. But what is geospatial? What is geo design, and why is it so important to look at geospatial technology and architecture and stuff? Because I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that.
Yes, yes. So I think that geospatial, it's really, I call it what is seen, mostly what is not seen. uh, Design is basically making something, take form, right? If you want to do a design, you need to actually apply geospatial analysis, which means that, for example, if I decided I want to do a restaurant next door to my house, right? Well, because I have the money, what we do usually is that because I have the money, I'll put it together, I'll build that restaurant. Well, the problem is that not only can I be building that on a soil that is actually messed up or that cannot hold that much, that much structure, or I could actually have put a restaurant in an area where people don't need that type of restaurant. So before doing that, we need to do an analysis of the community, understanding the space, the environment, the geography, like what we're bringing into design there, are the material that will actually be sustained or be sustainable for that area. For instance, one of the things that we do is showing off, new material coming from all over the place. Well, the world is designed. I mean, God created this world perfectly so that if something grows here, it will die here, and it will actually disseminate and do something else so that it will create, so so that the land could be fine. The problem now become geodesign has allowed us. What is geodesign? Geodesign is the ability to think about how you could make something work in a way that work with the environment and the people, and that doesn't actually, how do you say, lessen the power of the environment to be what the environment is. Geodesign is designing to augment the capability of human and the environment. So when, for example, I decide to ship, let's say, wood from China to Georgia, I have to think about the temperature in Georgia, the fact that the type of material that I'm going to put in it, within that temperature, will it actually start releasing gas that is bad for the environment or bad for the people? Because different locations act differently with the material that we're creating. So thinking geo in a way that is geo design is, how do I bring this material and what do I put on it so that that location doesn't cause it to become a bad thing for environment, because we live a life where we inhale so many gases and we die from cancer, this and that. We don't know where that came from, right? It's because we have this idea of showing off and getting something from China, from India, not realizing where we're bringing it, right? If you bring something plastic that comes from a place that is colder to a place that get 120 degrees, it's going to melt. And the melting is not just losing the material, that's materiality and that's nothing. But the problem is, what gas is it actually releasing, and how is it going to affect the people there, and how is it going to affect the environment? If it wasn't created there and you don't have the mechanism to actually deteriorate it, it's going to be affecting not only the environment but the people. And geodesign really actually look at all of that. It's even, my grandmother did geodesign anyway. When she traveled from her little place to come visit us, just looking at, she brought eggs that were actually still in the basket when she got there because she wrapped it around. That's geo design. Understanding that I'm going to be on those roads that bounce and realizing that I need to actually take care of it in ways that it get there in a great shape. That's geo design. So we are basically born as, we are all born, a geo designer. We are born so smart that we could do all of those things. But then we get into this life of being told what to do that we forget what
Mm.
normal life is about. So I think that it's really that when we start this formal education, we get hijacked from our natural and connection with nature.
No, that's beautifully said. It's funny because we're born. It's like we're born with all this intuitive understanding of who we are, who our soul is, and how to interact with our environment and how to heal, how to be resilient. And then it's like we forget all of that, and then we try to develop technology to do the things that we already know how to do.
Yeah,
And it's crazy, but no, I think these conversations and the work that you're doing definitely give me hope, because this is 100% what the world needs right now. So it's really just figuring out the best places to apply it and the best ways to communicate these principles. Not tell people information, but teach them principles that can help them,
yeah.
just live better, design better, create better, etc.
Definitely, definitely.
So thank you, Christine. This has been an enlightening conversation. We'll definitely have to have another one at some point. I think there's a lot of topics that we could have gotten into, but I really appreciate your perspective on education, and I'm excited to collaborate with the Smart North Tech Hub and work on some programming with the youth in that community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure and thank you. Anytime.